Have you found yourself listening to an episode of the Vincast, Australia's premier wine podcast, wondering how you might be able to get access to some of the wines made by some of the guests of the podcast? Well, now you can, because I've partnered up with Different Drop, an online wine retailing company based up in Sydney, but they can actually very easily send you wines anywhere in the country. And in fact, they list wines of a number of the previous guests of the podcast. So they've very kindly set up a little section on their website. So if you go to differentdrop.com/intrepidwino, they've actually curated a list of wines and even some packs of former guests of the podcast. So guests like Brash Higgins, Amato Vino, Unico Zello, Franklin Estate. You can get wines from them and put together your own little pack if you want to, and they have a huge range of other wines as well. And that way you can actually taste the wines as you listen to the Vincast. So thank you very much, Different Drop, for providing that great service. When you do go to purchase, guys, make sure to put in the code INTREPIDWINO, and the Different Drop guys will give you a 10% discount. So thank you for your support of the podcast, and thanks for supporting those amazing winemakers. On episode 72 of the Vincast, I chat with Adrian Santolin, a winemaker originally from Griffith, who in the last few years has very quickly established a reputation for producing exceptional wines based in the Yarra Valley. Hello there, Vincasters, and welcome to another episode of the Vincast. My name is James Garsbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. It was lovely to have so much positive feedback and lots of interest in last week's episode of the Vincast with Shashi Singh. It was, of course, lovely having her on the show itself. I enjoyed the chat. I hope you did too. And it was also lovely to taste her 2014 Syrah. Now, as mentioned on last week's episode, if you would like to support Shashi, definitely recommend heading to the Rootstock Sydney Festival, which is on the 28th and 29th of November, so next weekend. And that where you'll actually be able to meet Shashi yourself and taste her wine. So if you do go to that event, please let Shashi and any of the other artisans who are going to be at the festival who have been on the podcast, let them know that you heard them on the show, and it would really be great feedback to them to know that they heard about their story from the podcast. And if you do go to the event, please keep an eye out for me. I'll actually be there working with Gabriel Bini or Serragia from Pantelleria. I'll be pouring the wines all weekend because that is actually my day job, working for the importer. And thank you for your ongoing support. Now, I would love to hear from you, as always, guys. It's great to receive some feedback and also a rating review on iTunes. And, of course, I want to hear more from you as far as things you'd like to hear on the podcast, ideas, guests potentially you might like to hear from. So please do get in contact with me. You can email me, thevincast@gmail.com, or just send me a message through intrepidwino.com. So on this week's episode of the Vincast, I chatted with a relatively young winemaker, Adrian Santolin, who in a very short period of time under his own brand has crafted some amazing wines which already are garnering a lot of attention from sommeliers and wine journalists alike. And so I was really interested to kind of hear about his background and how he ended up in the Yarra Valley. And it was a really fascinating chat. He was also kind enough to donate a couple of bottles for me to taste, which I did on my YouTube channel, Intrepid Wino. And you can have a look at the Let's Taste Santolin video and hear my impressions of his wines. But I hope you enjoy this episode. Please stick around for the end so you can find out how you can get in touch with Adrian to thank him for being on the show. But until then, I'll see you on the other side. Adrian, thank you very much for coming down Sunday morning and sitting down on the Vincast. Welcome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
And if you weren't aware, I usually start every episode by asking my guest if they can remember what their first interaction with wine was that sort of made them think that they might like to work in the industry.
It's apart from maybe drinking some very low quality stuff as a very, very young man. The first quality wine that I had was probably Tyrrell's, that one. I was from Griffith, where there's a lot of bulk wine made there, and I sort of thought I suppose at a young age, also you sort of don't have that taste for wine, but I did get a chance to try a wine from a different region, and all of a sudden I thought, oh, hang on, there's more to wine than what I've experienced. And
what was the context of tasting that wine?
It was just happened to be around some people that were they were winos, and they cracked open this bottle, and I was still sort of, I suppose I was about
fairly green.
Yeah, still fairly green. And then they showed me that wine, and I've gone, well, that I can actually taste the difference between that and what I've drank before, and I actually can enjoy this. So there's something that opened my eyes, and I realised, there's something more to this, and I better get out there and explore.
Had your family been involved with wine at all when growing up in Griffith?
Yeah. So my extended family were all sort of farmers, and we had various fruit farms and a little bit of grapes, and my parents also worked in wineries. So at a very young age, I did want to make wine, and then
was that sort of like a following in the family? Family.
I think I just sort of like making things. Sort of like cooking and so
food was important as well.
Yeah. Okay. So food and wine was important. And as I got a little bit older, and I was in high school, and I sort of thought, agriculture's hard, winemaking could be hard, and I just wanted something, I suppose, that seemed a bit more glamorous to a teenage kid at the time. And
it wasn't like a rebellion against the family. It's like, oh,
no, not really. It was just there's no pressure to do anything. It was just I just thought maybe my future lies somewhere else, and went to uni and studied sports management in Canberra.
So did you play much sport when you were young?
Yeah, well, nothing at an elite level, but I played a lot of different sports at school or on the weekend, and I love football. In terms of that's soccer or rugby league, I played a bit of that, and
watching it as well.
Yeah, I love watching it. Yeah, so I still do get up at crazy hours in the middle of the night, and have to watch
watching the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, like watching the Rugby World Cup, or just watching Premier League or something. It's yeah. So yeah, it keeps you busy. But I sort of studied sports management, and then basically the day I graduated, I realised I probably should have done something to do with wine, and so I started again and got back into the wine industry.
So what was it that kind of made you go, oh, this is not what I want to do, or I should have been doing something else, or what was it about the sports management course that kind of made you go, not then pursue a career in that industry?
So it was probably a tough gig to get a decent paying job or just get into. I was, sort of started applying for jobs, and you sort of see what the wage is, and you're like, oh, maybe have I made the right career choice? Yeah. And but even getting jobs, there's been like a lot of ex-athletes that go through the universities doing sports management, and they've obviously got the first choice when it comes to a couple of good jobs. So I knew I didn't have too much of a hope of landing what I suppose was my dream job, and so I just thought, well, I know people in the wine industry. I've got a background in agriculture. I'm not scared of hard work, so maybe I should have stuck with what I knew. And so I went back there, and it's probably the right choice. But it was a good learning curve, and
and that's the thing. You get the opportunity to kind of say, is there something else out there for me? To say, no, this is actually what I want to do. And I think that probably makes you more committed, more passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I also met a few people, and learned a few things that have sort of helped me along the way. So, it's been funny. It's I've interacted with a few of those people in terms of the wine industry as well, whether it was
Oh, wow.
maybe they needed, in terms of sponsorship, or if they might be involved in marketing or advertising. So it's sort of all intertwined in the end.
Yeah, and I think to a certain extent, it gives you the opportunity to sort of think outside the square. If your only experience is in wine, you might not see another opportunity or another way of kind of resolving an issue. But if you can talk to someone who's possibly doesn't have that kind of experience, they can say, well, why don't you do this? And go, oh, I never thought about doing it that way.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense because a lot of people in the wine industry are sort of stuck in their ways. So sometimes you do need that, to think a bit differently. And someone from the outside, they can just come up with a really simple idea, and you just sort of go, well, why hasn't anyone thought of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what was the first step as far as coming back to then kind of pursue a career in the wine industry?
I moved back to Griffith and just started working at one of the local wineries, and did a bit of lab work, and enrolled in a winemaking course at Charles Sturt, and the winery was Bortoli Wines, and they bought a winery in the Hunter Valley at that stage in 2002, and myself and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, they offered her a job as cellar door manager, and offered me a job as a trainee winemaker. So we moved to the Hunter Valley, and
nice.
Really sort of kicked off our careers in the wine industry.
Had you had much dealing with De Bortoli in the past? Was there a reason you kind of went to work for De Bortoli?
I'd sort of worked all my school holidays there for just
really
get a bit of cash as a kid. So I'd just work, whether it was a bottling line or somewhere in the cellar, just working there.
So the Griffith area is where obviously a lot of, as you said, kind of bulk wine comes from, but it's also where kind of one of the iconic wines of Australia comes from, which is the noble one, Botrytis Semillon.
Yep.
Was that a wine that you were kind of introduced to young? Did you? I don't know. Did you like it because it was sweet, maybe?
Yeah, I suppose that it definitely is something that you could drink. Now you probably could have a glass or two with some cheese and really enjoy it, but you're not going to drink a lot of it. I suppose when you're a bit younger, you could probably put a bit more away. But so it was very iconic wine, not just for the region but for Australia, and they've got a couple of other. They've got another wine called Black Noble, which is a fortified version of Noble One, and
it's a blend of Noble One and something, isn't it?
They make a couple of different.
Fortify the wine.
Yeah, so they fortify. So they have Noble One as a base, and they fortify it and then age it for a bit longer. And it's quite a nice fortified. So, they made wines to fit certain price points, and you get to see that, and it's also an important part of just business, I guess. Sometimes you've got to make a wine to fit your markets, or and it was good working there. It got money as a kid, so that was sort of the main reason when you're just on your school holiday and you need a bit of cash for the rest of the year. And
how far away is Griffith from Wagga, for example?
It's about 2 hours.
Okay,
yeah, so it's not too far.
But you weren't commuting as you were studying.
So I studied by correspondence, and you sort of head to res school twice a year, and try and. Was that not drink too much beer while you're there and learn something, do a couple of exams?
Well, I can imagine that, do you have much contact with the other students? Do you know sort of who the other students are, where they are, like outside of the residential school, to then come together and kind of catch up?
Yeah, eventually you do. When you first start, because I'd gone to university full time, it was really different doing it by correspondence part time, and because you were always there. When you're full time, you're always there. There's lecturers, there's other people to see, and you're sort of always around that university atmosphere. As when I was doing it part time, you've got work and you've got to come home and study, and then if you do get stuck or you have a question, you're sort of like, oh, do I just get on the phone and ask a lecturer? But after the first res school, you get in touch with a few other students, and you realise there's a couple of guys that are probably studying from they're probably nearby where you live as well. So got to meet up with a couple of those guys locally, and then you can always call a couple of other people that were from wherever they were from, and get in contact with other students, and lecturers were happy to take calls as well. So
And did you get a lot out of the actual course itself as far as learning? How much did you know about sort of winemaking before you actually started the course?
Yeah, I did a couple of years full time, and obviously I had the background of at least being involved in it as a child, as a school kid on my school holidays, and so I knew a fair bit, and it was quite surprising when I did go to res school how little some people did know.
Well, some of the profs will be starting from scratch.
Yeah, that's right. They're starting from scratch, and which is fair enough. But it was a bit eye opening.
But good to also really cover the fundamentals so well.
Yeah, that's right. I was more of the opinion that winemaking is probably more of an apprenticeship. You should sort of work somewhere on the job, learn from that person, like a mentor, and then maybe go to a TAFE or something to supplement your theory. Like I probably didn't get the most out of university, as I'm sure a lot of people did and find that really useful. I was definitely more learning on the job, and even just reading or tasting wines myself. So it was a lot of self-education, really.
But getting access to kind of I guess you might call them industry experts as far as the lecturers, and then also other students is kind of, I would think it would probably be a good opportunity to at least discuss stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Like, so it's once again it's a chance to see things from different people's perspectives,
different regions,
yeah, and like also being taught how to do things a certain way, and it just makes you think in a different way. It makes you think about doing things differently, so it gives you ideas, and it's something that's always very important, because when you're making a wine, you've got to have an idea of how you're going to do it, and you always got to be open to the possibility of doing it a different way. So talking to different people, going to university, working different places, you've got to build up your knowledge, your base knowledge, so you can have an idea of what needs to be done.
In the same way that you went away and studied the sports management course to kind of go, no, I definitely want to do this. Same sort of thing, you're talking about learning about what the other opportunities are to kind of go, oh no, I definitely want to do this.
Yeah. So it's very much the same thing. You sort of see a few people doing it that way, and you might go, oh, well, I don't know if that's the best way, but you might go back and try it out, and then you realise, no, that's not it. So I'll stick with what I'm doing, or I'll do something different. So you really do need to experience a lot of things.
So there was a bit of a sea change up to the Hunter Valley, and quite poetic, I guess, in that it was a VAT 1 Hunter Semillon that actually kind of got you on the path of wine.
I'd never really thought of that way actually, but I do love Hunter Semillon. I still do. It's a great wine. A great Australian wine that, I guess, in a lot of ways underrated. They're wines that can last for years and years and change so much and just become absolutely stunning wines. And I did like it in the Hunter Valley. Just you make some nice Semillons, and also Hunter Valley Shiraz is fairly iconic as well, so it was a good region to start.
Not to mention the history. I mean,
great history.
I've been reading Campbell Mattinson's book, The Wine Hunter, which is it's a biography of Maurice O'Shea, and it's so interesting. Like thinking about he talks about when they first started planting vines up in the Hunter Valley, and you think, God, I can't imagine how hard that must have been. So just the wine history itself of the Hunter Valley is fascinating.
Yeah, well, that's I think. Some of the first, I think Australia's first vines may have been planted near in the Hunter. Certainly,
as far as commercial vines, I think.
Yeah, and so it is a region steeped in history, and I suppose learning about Maurice O'Shea, when I did work in the Hunter Valley for Bortoli's, the winemaker at that time used to work at Mount Pleasant, which is where Maurice O'Shea, that was his original winery. And so I got a few anecdotes, which were once again good, just things to make you think. And he made some absolutely cracking wines, and I was able to taste I think it was a 1956 Richard that he made, which was it was still very much alive, a pretty good wine. And do you sort of think, well, this guy didn't have cooling, this guy didn't have all the mod cons that we have these days, and you sort of go, well, he just had an open pot ferment, wild yeast, no cooling, used to put a bit of Trebbiano in with the Shiraz, just to like really underripe Trebbiano to adjust the acidity. And you just sort of, think about, that was someone that was doing what they can with what they had.
Yeah.
And I guess it's thinking outside the square. So that sort of always sticks in my mind, and I think about those things. Like if I am making something, I'm going to go, well, I don't have to do it this way because I know it can be done, a lot simpler or a different way.
I think Maurice O'Shea is the absolute epitome of learning by doing.
Yeah.
And his apprenticeship was just doing it.
Yeah, that's right. So it's, I certainly think that moving to the Hunter, just and learning in the Hunter Valley was a great place to learn your trade, because you're doing Semillon, which is Australia's iconic, one of Australia's iconic wines, and Hunter Shiraz is another iconic Hunter red, and so you're sort of learning learning about some good varieties and just I guess some simple winemaking. It's a great place to learn.
How long did you end up spending in the Hunter Valley?
About 4 years. 4 years, yeah.
With all of the Bortoli?
Yeah, all at the Bortoli. I'd do the vintage in the Hunter Valley, and because it is a little bit warmer and vintage is earlier, and then I'd shoot down and do the vintage in the Yarra Valley as well. So
right, okay.
So it was a couple of vintages per year, and once again that's another great learning curve, because you come down to the Yarra Valley and you see the different climate and the flavors in the different varieties as well, just compared to the Hunter Valley. And once again, the people there had a different winemaking philosophy. So it was just another step in just learning about all the different things that you can do, which I say is the number one important thing.
And of course, Yarra Valley, another region steeped in wine history for Australia, with
that's
Hubert's
right.
brothers and Chateau to Bilk, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What was it like coming to the Yarra Valley at first, as far as, growing up in Griffith? Hunter Valley is it is a warmer region. To come to the Yarra Valley and sort of see the wines, the cooler climate, so and totally different expressions. What were your first impressions of the Yarra Valley?
I guess it was more of a scenic thing. I found it really picturesque. A beautiful place.
There's a reason why there's a lot of tourism in that region as well. Apart from the fact that it's so close to Melbourne.
Yeah. I guess I never really looked at it in terms of the cool climate, but I just saw it as something different, and it was just something that I just took on board and started looking at and going, okay, this is what this looks like, this is what happens here, and just store all that away in the memory bank and take stuff as it comes. But myself and my wife, we liked it here, and we ended up moving here in the end. So it certainly made a big imprint on us, and it's great that it's pretty close to Melbourne as well, so it's good lifestyle.
And how did is it just 3 facilities, or have they got more facilities to Bortoli?
They've got the winery in the Yarra Valley, the Hunter Valley and Griffith. They've got vineyards in the King Valley.
That's right.
That's about it. Yeah, but so it was good to work there, because you did see, working in the Yarra Valley, you also got to see King Valley fruit, because that got moved, shipped down to the Yarra Valley.
Yeah.
While I was in the Hunter, we did a little bit of a Tumbarumba Chardonnay and some fruit from Orange as well. So I got to see fruit from lots of different regions, which, cool. I guess it's an advantage when you're sort of working at a place like that. Again,
just giving the opportunity to look at the different stuff to sort of say, no, this is where I definitely want to go. So what was it that, what was your next step after working for the Bortoli?
My wife and I, we both sort of thought, okay, I think we've hung around long enough, and it's time for a bit of a change. And
were you married at this point?
Not yet. We decided we'd have I'd go and do a vintage overseas, so we'd travel overseas. Worked in England in a pub for a while, and I did a vintage in Italy, in Franciacorta. And
really, Franciacorta?
Yeah.
That's not somewhere that people would typically go. I mean, if they were going to do like that kind of wine, they would go to Champagne, I guess. But what was it that led you to Franciacorta?
I've got obviously an Italian background, and so I always wanted to go to.
That's why we're in Griffith.
Yeah. I always wanted to go to Italy, and just being able to speak their language as well, it sort of made things easier. And I just got in contact with a few people, and just happened to stumble across this winery in Franciacorta, who did a little bit of table wine as well as a sparkling wine. So I thought, I don't know too much about sparkling wine, so this will be a good experience.
Yeah.
And
So what was the winery?
the winery was called Maiolini.
Uh-huh.
It's in a little town called Ome, and the region is Franciacorta, and they specialise in sparkling wine. They had some some really good equipment and some nice underground cellars where they was aging everything on lees, and I think the important part was also that they did that little bit of table wine, so I got to sort of experience the whole range of fruit that was coming from that region.
Yeah.
And also got to make a wine from a variety I'd never heard of, and that was just sort of native to their region. The grape was called Maiolina, and I think it was named after. It may have had some links to their actual family, so it was really interesting. And I sort of didn't know what to do with it. I tasted a couple of previous vintages, and it was a really just interesting grape. It was, I suppose, a little bit like Shiraz, but not. And and so the wines looked really interesting, and it was great to be involved with sparkling wine because like I said, I had never had much to do with it before. So, and also just seeing the different fruits, different varieties, and.
The James Halliday Top 100 for 2015 is announced this very weekend. And if you're not familiar with the name James Halliday, which you should be, he is the man behind Wine Companion. Wine Companion is an amazing resource for information and tasting notes about lots and lots of Australian wines. And they actually support the podcast in some small way through promotion. And in return, you, the listener, can actually get access to their subscription with an amazing deal. If you go to winecompanion.com.au and when you apply for any subscription package, if you put in the code Intrepid30, they'll give you an incredible 30% discount, which is an amazing way to have that resource online and through the magazine and actually support so many of the Australian winemakers who very kindly donate their time to be on this podcast. So thank you very much, Wine Companion. I look forward to finding out what those top 100 wines of 2015 are. Did you get to travel much at all whilst you were in Italy or in Europe?
Yeah. So I've got family that are in the Veneto region, and so once I did the vintage there, we spent a bit of time travelling around the place. So obviously, Franciacorta is in Lombardy, so it's we were near Milan, we were near Brescia and Verona, and then headed over to see my relos there in Treviso. So headed over to Venice plenty of times. And
speaking of sparkling wines.
Yeah. So and that was probably another choice, but I just happened to get in contact with this place in Franciacorta rather than the Veneto region, and then we did a couple of trips to Florence and Rome. Probably we mainly stuck to the northern part of Italy just because we had a base to travel from with where I was working, and then relos as well. So but yeah, it was a really good experience.
And were you trying as much wine as you could whilst you were there? Were you interested in had you had much experience with Italian wines or Italian varieties before that?
Not too much. I mean, you'd probably only see, I think, that stage in Australia. There was only Sangiovese. There might have been a few. There was a little bit of Barbera around. I think you'd see some of the first Nebbiolos sort of coming out, and
it was Pinot Grigio.
Yeah, it was Pinot Grigio. Yeah, and I think there was obviously it's a Spanish variety, but there was some Tempranillo around as well. I don't think there was that much focus on Italian varieties yet. Like it was the beginning of it certainly, but I don't think everyone had sort of dug right into what the varieties can really do in Australia.
But were you interested in tasting a lot of wine whilst
Yeah. So luckily, the owner of the winery where I was working was friends with Chiretto. So we sort of headed down there one day and tasted a few of their wines, and obviously also travelled around Franciacorta and I tried a few other sparkling wines and tried a few wines from the Veneto region and also the Trieste region as well. So that's all sort of close by. So once again, it was mainly northern Italian wines. Also, where I was working, they did buy some Sicilian grapes as well and bring them to the winery. So Yeah, and that's sort of where I probably got my first introduction with Nero d'Avola. Yeah.
So when you eventually ended up back in Australia, what was the next step then?
Yeah, basically just trying to find a job. It's a pretty tough, especially in the Yarra Valley. There's because it's near a capital city, it's pretty tough finding a job. And
People can commute a little bit easier.
yeah, that's right. So Rebecca found a job fairly easily, and she started working for McPherson's as part of the To Built group. And I started working for Rochford, and and then worked at a couple of little wineries around the place. And I was just trying to get as much experience as I could before sort of deciding where we could really sort of settle down and make our own wine. So
had you had for a while the idea to kind of do something for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. That was always my plan. I just sort of had to convince Rebecca that that's what we had to do, because obviously to make your own wine, you either need some of your own equipment, or you need to buy grapes, obviously, and once you make the wine, you need to sell it, which is the important thing. And so she talked a little bit of sense into me, and we waited till, I guess, the right time. And but that was something I always wanted to do. And I worked for a few years to try and twist her arm to take the step and let's do this.
Because obviously that's one of the I guess one of the barriers about wine is that there is a fair amount of money you have to put down, as far as investing. Okay, well, first I have to buy the fruit, and then I have to either buy or lease equipment and space in a winery, and and then it'll take time to mature enough to put it into bottle and then put it into the market to then get my money back. So, from start to finish, we're talking at least a year and a half.
Yeah, so you're talking a year and a half before you can sell your product, and in that time you need to sort of make 2 vintages worth of wine, and the
grape growers, are not going to say, "Oh, it's okay. Would you just pay us when you get money for the wine?" No,
so
they want payment.
That's right. So it is a tough industry to get going in, and that's sort of why we chose the current path that we're on. I was working at a couple of different places where they probably wouldn't have let me make my own wine there, but I was sort of lucky enough to stumble across Rob Dolan Wines.
Yep.
And Rob had just moved into the old Yarraburn facility in Warrandyte in the Yarra Valley. And,
yes. I went there not long after he actually moved in.
Yeah, and I sort of actually I had some crazy idea that I would leave the wine industry to actually make wine in the wine industry. So I actually left full-time employment in the wine industry and was working just doing something completely different. And I had the idea, I'd just sort of approach someone and say, "Hey, I'll even work a couple of weeks for you for free during vintage. If I can make my few barrels of wine here, I've organised the fruit myself. I'll do everything myself. And once vintage is over, I'll tuck the barrels away in the corner of your shed, and I'll just come here on a Friday or something and top them up or check a sulphur and do whatever I need to do." So I went and actually see Rob about that, and he just sort of said, "Well, how about I just give you a job as a winemaker, and you can do your stuff here as well." So I said, "Well, okay, that sounds good."
Okay.
So that obviously helps with the equipment side of things. So I get to use the facility, and
it's a pretty good facility.
Yeah, it certainly is. There's a lot of open pots, and there's a beautiful big barrel shed. So. Had all the equipment that you need. So, I was able to do what I needed. And
even for sparkling wine too.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, we don't make too much of that, but it obviously was it was set up to do a lot of sparkling wine. So that's probably at work for Rob Dolan Wines. That's probably one of the challenges that we do face a little bit. Like we mostly do Pinot and Chardonnay table wines, and the place was originally set up for sparkling wine. So it was a bit of a challenge, just sort of handling things. But every year we improve the place a little bit, and sort of.
Are you tempted at some point in the future to maybe make some of your own Franciacorta?
It's always at the back of my mind. I do a little bit of prosecco at the moment. So I've sort of gone down the more Venetal path.
Yeah, on the family roots.
Yeah. So it's only a little tiny bit, but so I still have that interest in sparkling wines. But I won't ever fully go that side, but yeah, it would always be a part. Yeah.
Oh, Veneto, they do everything anyway.
So it might be. Yeah, maybe that's where my ideas are sort of coming from. It's
you go and you visit a lovely big prosecco producer, and they make like every variety you could possibly think of, still wine. And, and it's just like okay. Whoa, cool.
Yeah.
Pinot Nero in Veneto. Interesting.
Yeah, so I tried a lot of fairly interesting Merlots in that region as well. So
Merlots and Cabernets and stuff. Oh, God.
Yeah.
And so how did you sort of start to source fruit to make your own wines?
Well, so the first year I was just going to make a little bit of Pinot, and I sort of just thought, where am I going to get some quality fruit? Because I just didn't want to find anything. I wanted to really make a good wine, so I wanted the best fruit. And I used to work at Bortoli's a viticulturist named Stuart Proud, and sort of gave him a call, and he said, well, just so happens that I started managing a new vineyard, which was it's called the Simon Yarra Vineyard, or the Thousand Candles Vineyard, and there's a bit of fruit for sale, and you're most welcome to purchase it. So I know that he does a brilliant job. He's a great vineyard manager, and so I bought a little bit of a Pinot, and that was a start. And I still get fruit from that vineyard now, and it's a really good site and good aspect to the vineyard.
I think now it's pretty sought after fruit.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of people getting it. It does.
A lot of really good wine comes out of it.
Yeah, there were actually a couple of days ago we had a little tasting at the vineyard with everyone that makes wines from that vineyard, and I think I was pretty much impressed by every wine that was there. So there is a character to that vineyard, and it's most importantly it's good quality fruit, and it's a good character. So yeah.
What was the first actual vintage for Santolin Wines?
2012. So I did a 2012 Pinot, just 2 tons, and I sort of went down the path of very minimal intervention. Which would have been my style anyway, but that one I sort of decided, how about I treat this Pinot a bit like a Chardonnay and get in there and stir the barrels and really get the lees in contact with the wine, and keep doing that regularly. And there was no tannin added, no tartaric acid added. I didn't filter the wine, and I bottled it in. I didn't filter it, and so the wine does have this sort of haze, but I quite like that haze, and it was it's still
the Burgundians seem to like it.
Yeah, it's still my favourite. It's probably still my favourite wine that I've made, and so I've kept a fair bit of it myself, and see how it goes in the future. But I was pretty happy with how it turned out. Since then, I've sort of I guess I went a little bit more commercial. I do rack it
conventional.
Yeah, maybe conventional. Yeah, that's probably a better word. I do rack it nice and clear. So the wines from then on have been clear. I think I'll go back to the slightly more hazy and hazy wines maybe when I make a bit more of a name for myself.
Okay, so you started with Pinot in the first year?
Yeah, and then next year I added a Chardonnay. So sourced that from a vineyard that I was living pretty much right next to in Chirnside Park at the time. The vineyard was about 20 years old, and it was well looked after, and got some good fruit from it, and so we added that, and then also started making a few other wines that year because we were sort of lucky enough to stumble across Naked Wines, and they're an online retailer, but they support small winemakers. So
is this one based in the UK?
Yeah, so they were based. They started off in the UK with their founder actually started Virgin Wines with Richard Branson. So his name was Rowan Gormley. And I think Virgin Wines got bought out by Direct Wines at some stage, and he said, well, I don't like the way you're sort of headed. I'm going to start my own one. And he started Naked Wines in 2008.
Yeah.
And it was basically the way it works is customers pay in the UK, they pay £20 a month up front, and that money builds up in their account, and then they can buy whatever wine they can use that money they've already deposited, or they can spend a bit more money and buy the wines that are on offer, and it's a good business model for Naked Wines because they've obviously already got the money in the bank, and they can use that money to support and fund small winemakers. So for myself, for instance, if I need a barrel, I can just sort of send them an email and they'll send me a bit of cash to pay for barrels and fruit along the way. So it's great cash flow. And
so it's almost like an investment scheme, like the customers are investing their money, and Naked Wines are kind of like their brokers, and they're seeking out the good stocks, which are in this case is yourself, and investing money into your business and getting the dividend, which is the wine. The customer can,
So and that works well because if they're investing the money, they know that they're going to get the wine, and they know it'll be sold because these people have already paid for their wine, and it's great for winemakers as well because you're making this wine and you're going to sell it.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a great way to start as a small winemaker. But then all their members are called angels, and that comes from a term. I think I'm not sure when this was happening, but in America, I think people used to invest in theatre productions, and they were known as angels, these people that would invest. And so this is sort of like the same.
So it's got nothing to do with the angel share where
no, it just probably works out well. But it's sort of the same idea where it's crowdfunding really, and you invest in people's craft, and you get something out of it yourself.
Okay. And so and that partnership allowed you to
make a few more wines. So
do they kind of say, "Oh, could you make a wine like this?" Or have you thought about making, a Shiraz or that kind of thing?
They sort of leave it up to you. You sort of make what you want. They do tell you maybe what volumes they need. Obviously,
sure.
And they also tell us, they might have enough Shiraz. So if you were thinking of making a Shiraz, they might go, well, we've got a lot of it. Is there something else that you want to do? And
sure.
There's a little, hints that they might.
Encouragement.
Yeah, there's encouragement. But you're basically left to your own devices. And we started with them in 2012, just sort of stumbled across them. My wife sort of came up with a label for something else. We just sort of thought maybe we'll have our premium range and we'll make a little separate label where we can make that a more consumer sort of based, a customer based thing. And we showed this label and our business idea to someone, and they thought, oh, it's probably not the right thing for us, but there's these guys called Naked Wines looking for winemakers around the place. And so we showed the label to them, and they're like, you can be part of the team, jump on board. So when Naked Wines launched in Australia in 2012, we were the first winemakers to jump on board and started making wines with them. And we haven't looked back. We haven't looked back with them. Like we've made quite a few different wines, and it's all been good. It's been important to our business because if we weren't involved with those guys, I wouldn't have made too many other wines under my own current label as well.
And so how has the range evolved since then? Yeah,
so with Naked Wines, I obviously did a little bit of Pinot and Chardonnay as well in a premium level, but they're also about mid-level and entry-level wines, and so I was able to do a Shiraz Viognier out of Central Vic. I do a little sort of Alsace blend, for lack of a better term.
No, it's a Friuli blend.
Yeah.
What are the varieties?
There's Gewürz, Riesling, Pinot Gris, and sometimes there's either Sauv Blanc or Viognier in there as well. So
it's mostly an Alsace blend, I guess.
But it's an off-dry style, and we just want it to be a delicious wine, easy drinking, and I wouldn't have got the opportunity to do that if I was just on my own. It's Naked Wines has given us a chance to make a few different wines and make a bit more wine as well. So it's important for our business, but it was also important, I suppose, artistically as well.
But there's also been a more recent addition, which is a little bit more in connection with your Italian heritage, which is the Nero d'Avola.
Yeah, so I always wanted to do Italian varieties, and I decided to start with the Nero because it's a wine that I love. If you travel around southern Italy, that's probably virtually the only wine you get served anywhere. Everyone's got Nero d'Avola.
Down in Sicily.
Yeah. And I just thought it's a variety that's very well suited to Australia in the warmer parts. And Chalmers, I get the fruit from Chalmers Vineyard in Heathcote, and they specialise in bringing these Mediterranean varieties to Australia. So they're great at viticulture. They've got the right clones. They know how to grow these grapes, and so I knew I'd get some quality grapes. And it's like I said, it was a variety that I wanted to work with, and it's a variety that is great to drink. It's it's spicy. It's got some nice fruit flavors, and it's just easy drinking. And with it is what you see, what you get. It's got some nice tannins, but it's an easy drinking wine, and it's delicious at the same time. It's not bland, and so I decided to make that, and that's been going well. And 2014 was my first vintage of that, and it went well, and I've sort of doubled the production from 2 to 4 ton for 15, and it's a wine that's I think well suited to Heathcote, certainly.
That's exciting, and it's also, it's nice to kind of see the evolution of the Santolin story, I guess. And what about for the future? Have you got any other ideas, other varieties you'd like to work with? Yeah,
well, I'm probably thinking about doing some Vermentino. Once again, I sort of like that as a white variety. It, once again, easy drinking, but loads of flavour, well suited to sort of warmer climates. So I may do that for vintage 16. I just got to, whether I lock it in or not, I'm still sort of tossing up. But I've got to sort of manage my workload, because I've got obviously I've still got the full-time job at Santolin Wines. I'm doing my own thing, and my wife just gave birth to our third child about a week ago. So we've got a fairly full house now, and so we keep busy.
Well, considering that, I might end the episode there. It sounds like you've got plenty of things to keep you occupied, but I do certainly appreciate you making some time to sit down on the podcast today, Adrian. And what's the best way for people to get in contact with you to find out how they can source your wines and keep in touch with you?
Oh, yeah, so that'll be our website, which is currently being redeveloped. But so it's www.santolin.com.au, and Santolin spelled Santolin. And
on social media?
Yeah, we're on Facebook and Twitter, so just search Santolin Wines, and it'll come up.
Fantastic, and definitely seek out some of those wines, guys. They're already turning some heads, and no doubt they will continue to do so in the future. But I look forward to tasting some of the wines.
Oh, thanks, and thanks for having me. And
no, my pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.
And thank you very much, guys, as always, for listening to this episode of the Vincast. I have been James Scaresbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. And of course, you can follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Intrepid Wino. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/Intrepid Wino. The Intrepid Wino YouTube page is where I do all my tasting videos. Of course, you can follow the Vincast on Twitter at the Vincast. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Player FM, Stitcher, any number of different podcast hosting apps or programs. And if you do that, please leave me a rating and review. It is really great to hear feedback and get the word out to other potential wine-loving podcast listeners. Of course, all that information is at intrepidwino.com. And that's where you can get in touch with me if you choose to. And I appreciate you listening as always. Looking forward to next week's episode. Hopefully looking forward to seeing some of you at Rootstock. But until next time, bye.